And 9:12 for a Friday morning. The Paralympics are in full swing. Loving watching what's going on there. But it's also a good time to think about the language that we use when referring to people living with disabilities, and also to understand the impact our words can have. So many of us use terms and words that can end up causing offence. Sadly, it's not intentional. A lot of it is quite unintentional. So what can we do to make sure that the language and terminology that's more respectful and accepting is what we use? River Knight is the co-founder of Developing Australian Communities. River, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No dramas at all. Why is it so important to use appropriate language when referring to someone with a disability?
Well, the reason we find that it's really important to use the right words is because the way we talk really shapes the way we value or devalue things in our community. It reshapes our reality and it communicates a lot to the people around us. So what we ask people to do is really start talking about people as people first rather than talking about disability first. So we don't talk about people being wheelchair bound or disabled. We try to talk about a person who may use a wheelchair or they may have a disability.
So, I mean, a lot of those terms that you've just mentioned are in some ways ingrained in society for some people, and there's no other way that they can think of expressing themselves. How do they change that that thinking that they've had for so long?
Well, the thing that we focus on is just giving people the experience. So we say watch things like the Special Olympics or the Paralympics that are coming up, because that's a great way to see the language, see people talking about themselves in a way that's very human and very person-focused. The exposure and just the experience is the best way to educate people. And we see that happening with our younger generation. So the Generation Z that we researched and had respondents from in our survey recently, we found that about 3/4 of them were quite comfortable in talking about disability in this space. But we still found that as people got older, the older generations, they really struggled about not being quite sure what to say and how to say it. So we say we'll start with the person and ask them.
I suppose everyone is quite individual in how they wish to be spoken to and how they deal with their with the disability that they may have. So I suppose that's probably the first trick, really, isn't it? No, ask the question. Don't be afraid to talk.
Well, even in the disability space, we have people who say, look, I'd rather you say that I'm a person with autism. And then other people say, I don't like that. I'm not carrying autism in a bag on my shoulder. I feel more comfortable if I call myself autistic. So they can identify what they're comfortable with. But we just say start with the person first. So I was at a shopping centre recently with a friend of mine who uses a very large wheelchair that's chin controlled because his movement in his arms and his legs isn't very good. And, I had a little lady come up to me and say to me, "You're a wonderful person for taking this poor man out shopping. Oh, aren't you beautiful?" And he rolled his eyes and I sort of went, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Does he talk?" And I looked at him and he's right next to me. And I looked at him and said, "Can you talk?" And he said, "No, mate, sorry, I can't talk. You'll have to tell her I don't know how to." And I said to her, "He says he can't talk." And she kind of just laughed. And then he said, and I wouldn't describe him as beautiful. He's not that good looking, So she started having a conversation. And then I could step back a little bit. And she had a chat with him and he had a chat to her. And after a minute, it was just two people having a normal conversation. And it was a really good experience because it started off with this very strange approach. And then she realised it was just a person that she's talking to. And that's what we want to look at. We want to talk about people and we want to come from strengths rather than talking about people being inspiration and special. They are just people. We are all people and we just want to normalise the language a little bit.
River Knight is co-founder of Developing Australian Communities, and the terminology, what words that we use for people with disabilities who may be living with a disability. It's interesting you bring that up though, because there's a campaign going on as part of the Paralympics, which is is it the 15? I can't think of the name of it now. It's
we the 15.
We the 15. That's right. Yes.
15%
and
of the population.
And that's exactly what it's talking about. Is about these conversations and about the recognition of people who have a disability, but more importantly, not identifying them by disability.
Exactly. It's about people with a disability being the same as everyone else. And even though we say to people, ask the question, you're going to have people who say, look, I'm getting sick of people coming up to me as the token person with disabilities and asking me questions about disabilities. So you may even find that some people with disabilities might actually tell you to go away if you want to have a conversation with them about it, because they're just shopping and they're just trying to buy the milk and they don't want to be helpful for you. They just want to be a person. So, you're going to have people that are nice and not nice. You're going to have people that are rushed, that pay mortgages, that pay tax, that work just like everyone else. We just need to treat people as people. And we find that, over 65, more than half of them are living with a disability. We're talking about millions of people in Australia. So it's not hard to find someone in your immediate network that has a disability that you can, have a look at and think, well, if that was me, how would I like to be talked about?
Interesting. At least if we're thinking about it, River, then that's a start, I suppose.
Absolutely. We don't want to be walking on eggshells, so we just want to be respectful and just start talking to people like they're people.
Lovely. River Knight, appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
River is the co-founder of Developing Australian Communities, and don't be afraid to start a conversation if that's what you want to do, and don't be afraid of a person with a disability that you might see, or fear that you might say the wrong thing. I mean, it's more about finding out from them how they want to talk about it, or if they even want to talk at all. So there you go.